Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone on this Thursday, 1 week from today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the NFL is back in our lives. We have college football this weekend. Beforehand, Tennessee will open up with Virginia. We'll talk to Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News-Sentinel about that very game. Just down the street from us here in downtown at 11:20 today, Mike Vrabel is going to meet with the media here shortly. In fact, he's up at the press conference. So why don't I shut up, send it over to the head coach.
1 year. Mike, Gil Brandt passed, they've announced that he's passed this morning. I don't know if you ever crossed paths with him, but what he meant maybe to the game of football and especially the way the NFL is played today?
Well, condolences to him and his family, the Cowboys organization. Gil was, somebody that I met coming out of college. I met him at the Walter Camp All-American Banquet and spent the weekend with him. Just his passion for football was infectious. You could tell how much he loved the game and loved being around it.
Do you feel now, having Nick Folk on the roster and Cade York coming onto the practice squad, how do you feel about your kicker situation at this point?
Well, Nick's our kicker. Nick is our kicker. I feel really good about him and about what he's done and what he will do. Just felt like it was a good opportunity to bring Cade in here to allow him to develop and work and see where he's at.
Is Nick going to be your kick offer?
Nick is our kicker. We don't have a kick offer.
Kickoffs have been an issue for him over the last couple of years. Do you anticipate he can get better at it, or
I don't know if that. I don't know if that's been something that's an issue. I think that whatever they were asking him to do, I think we feel comfortable. Whether we're going to kick a touchback or whether we're going to go cover kicks and wherever we do it at.
You guys like about Vildor kind of skill set?
Well, he's a competitive coverage player. Veteran has played snaps and kind of looking at where we were with Anthony Kendall and his contributions in special teams and allowing him to make it onto the roster. I just felt like we needed to add a veteran guy, and Kendall showed well in his preseason exposure and is a veteran that's played in this league.
How about Trevis Gibson? Things continue to develop there. What are some things that you liked about him that wanted to make him bring him in?
We'll keep you updated on that transaction when it happens.
Is there any special challenge that comes with having 11 rookies on the roster and getting so many young guys who've never seen any real NFL action ready?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. The biggest thing, just continue to try to talk to them about whether they're, let's say on the offensive, package or the show team, how critical those show team reps are for their development, for them to improve. Trying to talk to them about preparing as a starter each and every day that they come in here, the work that they're going to have to put in, how they're going to have to work harder now that they're here than they did to try to get here. That's the whole goal. But once the season starts, there's not that many reps. There's not as many reps as there was in training camp. So trying to use those show team opportunities to really improve and develop.
What's like the mindset shift now that you get the preseason behind you, a lot of the moves behind you, now you've got a game, regular season game coming up in about 10 days. How's the mood maybe changing the building, the approach?
I hope the mood hasn't changed. I hope we come work prepared and ready to go with some energy, with enthusiasm, with a willingness to learn and improve and study the game plan, study our opponents, and transition that to the practice field and work on, timing and precision, and continue to work on all the things that we believe are important to winning.
How do you like Ryan Tannehill has been just as far as staying locked in, despite knowing that Levis is on the roster, Willis is on the roster, future replacements for him? How do you like the way he's been locked in with
Yeah, I don't. All the other stuff. I think the most important thing is that Ryan is locked in. Ryan is focused. I love where his attitude is. I love his demeanor. I love his communication with the receivers. I love his communication with Tim. So excited about his season and him playing quarterback for us.
How about the communication with you, just as far as like always knowing where he stands regardless of whatever background noise is out there?
Ryan and I have a great relationship as far as I'm concerned. I have the ability to talk to him about different things on and off the field. How he feels, you would have to ask him. I mean, I hope it's the same. I don't see any issues. I like the way that he approaches practice and approaches his job, and very professional. Means a lot to him.
Is Kear's your opening day punt return?
Well, we're, like Jimmy mentioned, 10 days away, so we'll kind of see where we're at in 10 days.
7 guys in that room. What was the kind of the thinking behind that on the initial 53 of that night?
Just different things of getting guys on the roster and kind of carry Kyle for a day, and so that's how it looks. It's now 6 after the first 24 hours.
Mike, challenge of seeing potential.
Go ahead.
Thanks. What have you learned about DeAndre in his time with the team and how he's maybe even taken on a leadership role, even though he's kind of a newbie to kind of your system?
Who's that?
DeAndre.
Oh, yeah. I apologize. Have really just enjoyed his professionalism, his the way that he's practiced, his communications with Ryan, the receivers, communication with Tim. I mean, he's run a lot of these routes and run a lot of these plays, and enjoy the competitiveness that he shows in practice. So by seeing that, I know that it means something to him, and I appreciate the time that we've had together, and we'll continue to work and try to give him opportunities to help us win. It's been good addition.
Mike, you were quoted in a piece in the Ringer today about saying that turning the football over is a non-negotiable. With Malik, while he's made a lot of improvements, turned the football over in the preseason, how much is that a focus over the next 10 days if he is going to be your backup quarterback?
Well, one, I appreciate you keeping up on me and following. But I don't think I said non-negotiable. I said that's just how you'll lose. Maybe I said non-negotiable. I don't remember. It was one of the couple interviews that I did. It has to improve. You know what I mean? It has to. And he knows that. All the good things that Malik did, he knows that. And again, there can be, I'm trying to make a play, but at some point in time, we just have to make them good ones. And learn from them, not make the same mistake twice. And just knowing coverages and say I'm not forcing it in there. I'm just going to live to fight another day. I'm going to check it down. But also there's some elements to, you have to throw it into some spaces down the field. And one thing that we had talked about coming out of Minnesota with those things that we were looking to improve on was our ability to try to move the ball down the field. So we took the shot to Chris, which was great. Chris came back. The defender wasn't playing the ball. Chris did a great job, did what we coached him to do. They threw it in there to Nick. Nick ran through the catch. So a lot of great positive things, and then we have to eliminate some of those things. And then also, like we tell every quarterback, when it breaks down, you got to have two hands on the ball. You got to pull through some arm tackles, and we can't be loose with the ball. Same thing we tell Derek. Same thing we'll tell, Julius and DeAndre and Chig and everybody that carries it. So, we understand that we have to be better and improve our ball security. We also have to improve, our ability to disrupt the football and turn it over. And we have to hit them hard enough to knock it loose. We have to knock it off the quarterback. We have to tip some passes and intercept them, and we have to, make some plays in the deep part of the field. Loved how he's worked to get back, and just, again, he just kept saying, hey, I'm ready. And it's like, this is kind of the conversations that you have with players, and, it's been good to see him work extremely hard to get out there and push and find ways to get in as opposed to looking for ways to get out. And he was like, just give me a chance. Let me get out there. Let me practice. Let me work. And I mean, he even took some team reps yesterday and came through that really good. And we'll get some more in there today. So again, we'll just keep working him in there, see how he responds to the work. And the other thing I really appreciate is we've had guys that are working with him now back at practice where, Jeff Simmons can go over there to the side and work 3/4 speed and say, I know that this guy's just now getting back. What can I do to help you? Whether that's pass rushers that are just coming off the ball and maybe not going full speed or going through contact or doing some things to help them. So I appreciate that from the players, and I thank them as well.
You're listening to Titans head coach Mike Vrabel at the podium ahead of the team's practice today.
Yesterday and the few reps that he had.
Mike, I know a lot of people were kind of surprised to see just 3 tight ends kept on the roster, given there's no fullback on this team this year, and the way that this team's run a lot of 2 tight end sets in the past. Is that maybe indicative of what the new offense is going to demand in terms of personnel, or is that just the way that the chips fell this year?
Well, we felt like that's kind of where it was coming out of camp. That could change. The practice squad gives you, we tried to, Rand and I, his staff and our coaching staff tried to go through and, give us insulation at each position to where we felt like, okay, who would be the next guy in, who's his backup, who's his replacement, who could we, put in there through the course of the week if we needed to. So that's where it is today, and that could change next week and throughout the season.
Building the practice squad.
What's the challenge of seeing potential guy who, somewhat I thought was kind of
In between which positions?
Just like the safety and linebacker.
Yeah. I think Otis is going to work hard to be a linebacker and a special teams player, and it was really cool to see him and Chance and Monty. Monty coming back finally, get those reps and be Werner and B. Davis yesterday in a show team opportunity, and showed them tape of how those guys play and how quickly they see pullers and how quickly they get back into coverage. And I thought just those guys getting back into and playing linebacker, there's a lot of good players that have played on this show team and developed and improved that way.
Is whatever Monty was dealing with behind him now?
Well, in this particular case, yes, but I will say not to this matter, but we're always going to have things that we deal with outside of here, or we deal with injuries. It's part of life. It's part of professional sports. So when Monty was healthy, he returned, and that's where we're at. And so we have to make sure that he's prepared to help us going forward in the football game.
I asked it that way because he indicated that it wasn't an injury.
Well, I don't know if he didn't say that. I just, when Monty was healthy, Monty returned to practice, and when he was ready to go and cleared, So, however he phrased it, that's up to him. And again, we expect Monty to be out there and be, use his speed, use his, explosiveness, and practice. Got some team reps on our side and got some on the show team, and he's going to start off and knows that he has to be a dynamic special teams player for us that can run and then work his way in there defensively.
What did Xavier Newman show you in camp and preseason to make the jump from being a practice squad guy to the 53?
Just the competitiveness, his ability to play center and guard, and it was those between him and Roos and Ruppy, I thought those guys all improved, and they'll continue to compete and battle. As we work our way through the season, and so we just felt like, coming out of camp that, that's where we were.
For Levis and Willis, shifting to so much game focus, how do you go about handling their reps and getting their development?
I think that's interesting. We've tried to, give them both opportunities, trying to find where places where Ryan maybe could not take as many reps, also trying to to do some things with some younger guys based on health and receivers and defensive backs 7-on-7, after practice, and try to get some of those throws in. And because it is a challenge to try to get 2 young guys developed, but make sure that they're also getting the reps that they need to be ready for the game.
The new rules changed, the way you build a practice squad from when you first took over to the rules that they've had since COVID, and you've used that practice squad a lot over the last couple of years. So when you went about building this roster with Rand and making the final 53, did you think and approach it differently, knowing how to use the practice squad?
Well, I don't know if we've approached it any differently, but I would say that there's certainly guys that you think they're a developmental player, and you're going to give them some time, and they'll determine how much time that they get based on their effort and based on their improvement, their attitude, and all those things. And then there's probably another group that you say would feel comfortable probably putting them into the game on short notice if you needed to. So
About Traylon's progress?
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
That's Titans head coach Mike Vrabel, encouraged at the podium. 615-737-1045. That's the number. Jump in at any point. You can react to what the head coach had to say. You'll also hear from general manager Rand Carthon on a couple of things coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. So you've heard from Mike Vrabel. You'll hear from Rand Carthon a little later on. The kicker situation is most interesting. And my dear friends and colleagues in Titans media are in the locker room currently. Some are speaking to Nick Folk. We'll have some audio from that for you in just a moment. But the roster changes since cut day. You heard, how would you describe Mike Vrabel this morning, Lucas? By the way, good morning.
Good morning. How would I describe Mike Vrabel this morning?
Did he get down on it?
How would you describe Mike Vrabel this morning?
Disinterested. Generally disinterested. Now, that level of disinterest tends to continue throughout the course of the regular season. I think Mike's a much better interview when there's no football going on than when, they're in the throes of the thing. And they're about to be, right? They've got an actual opponent coming up in not too long from now. But I did think that a couple of things from their press conferences that are worth noting, keep coming back to kicker and the kicking situation that Rand Carthon kind of was asked some questions. Not kind of, he was asked some questions about the kicker situation. The exchange was interesting. We're going to play it for you in a little bit. But the roster changes since day one. Mike Vrabel today, disinterested Mike Vrabel, said of the roster, well, he was asked about 7 wide receivers. Lucas, do you happen to catch his response? Said, well, now there's 6.
Kyle Phillips placed on injured reserve.
Well, we haven't talked about that since last you and I were on the air together. We had that for primetime last night.
Imagine they anticipated that move, given that if you place him on IR before cut day, he's out for the season.
So here's the thing that I did not anticipate, because I think we all anticipated that a Kyle Phillips injured reserve transaction might be coming down the line.
Did you just not anticipate the transaction that followed that to replace that spot?
You're talking about the defensive back? No. What I did not anticipate is the knee brace. He apparently, I haven't seen him, but talked to a couple of people. He's apparently got an offensive lineman type knee brace on his knee. Now, he's maintaining that is not going to affect his mobility. But the idea that that's a thing is something to keep an eye on. Now, he's going to miss at least the first 4 games of the season. So we know for that purpose, Kyle Phillips out of the equation until basically October. If that, right? We have no idea. Not going to put a timeline on him. I know that there was a 4 to 6 week window tossed out there. I just, ever since Adoree Jackson, I get scared of windows. Do you remember that? That was such a ridiculous thing. And then, honestly, it's why one of the biggest reasons I felt like he didn't end up back here after they picked up his 5th-year option. In fact, the rules changed because they cut him after they picked up his 5th-year option. That's something you can't do anymore.
Stock down, Kyle Phillips.
Oh, just generally? Are you over the Kyle Phillips situation?
I didn't say I was over Kyle Phillips. I said stock down. Am I wrong?
No. It's just disappointing. Can I be disappointed, even if it's not his fault?
What's more concerning in these situations? If it's a recurring thing, if it's a recurring hamstring or quad or knee, or if it's shoulder and then hamstring and then knee in succession, all within a calendar year.
So it's kind of shall we call it the Tua theory? Is he just physically ill-equipped to handle the rigors of the NFL? Is that the Kyle Phillips story? Because he's small, right? He's a little guy. He's, 5'9", maybe? Generous, I think. Put on more muscle mass, right? This is Ryan Clark and Tua are exchanging barbs in the media right now because Ryan Clark was saying on a national television broadcast that Tua Tagovailoa clearly hasn't been in the gym, basically making fun of his shape.
Yeah.
When you look at Tua, and he's incredible. He is bulky, but it's because he put on so much muscle this offseason to try and prevent his injury. Now, who's to say? I mean, bigger pecs are going to keep you from being concussed. And there is evidence in the world of concussions that once you have them, there is a more frequent rate that they tend to occur at. So that's going to be a thing with Tua for as long as he's out there on a football field.
Oh, with Tua, the list is a whole lot longer than concussions.
Sure, but the concussions is the thing that had him contemplating retirement this offseason. So, by degrees, I'm going to put the concussion situation at the most severe. But it's kind of the Tua premise Is he just too small? Can he not last in the league because he's physically ill-equipped? It's not everybody can be Darren Sproles, who's 5'4", running around out there, and you feel like he's going to spontaneously combust every time he gets hit, but he doesn't. Adam Humphries was concussions, so it wasn't a multitude of injuries that just kept happening to the same player. It was a trend, right? They felt it unsafe. Almost Ben Jones, they had to shut Ben down at the end of the year because God knows Ben would have kept going back out there. So I think that the more concerning element of it, depending on what the injury is, brain injury always going to be top of the list for me. So like recurring concussions, that's tops.
My question is, when you're talking about the durability of a player, like we understand that concussions and head injuries are the most severe and the most concerning injury in football.
No, but I know I was getting there. I just paused a little bit.
Okay. All right. You're just taking a while.
It's a 3-hour radio show. What do you Where you got to be today? What's wrong with you?
Taking too long.
Just because you had to wait 25 minutes before you could talk into a microphone today because Mike Vrabel had to talk? What's your problem? Settle down. I was getting there. You are so impatient. You railroaded me yesterday with Pate because he's out here he's actively trying to derail the show, talking about Buick DeLoreans or whatever the hell. LeSabres.
I never even heard of a LeSabre.
I had to Google it afterwards. Anyway, so top of the list, concussions, recurring concussions, most severe. The fact that he's had a multitude of injuries and coupled with his size that I'm always going to hold against him, that the draft process is going to hold against him, that the league is going to hold against him because smaller dudes don't last as long as the bigger ones do, more often than not. So, yes, I would say if you're asking me to, my power ranking, what injuries I think matter the most, recurring injuries of different kinds to the same person with that kind of a build, that's up there for me.
That's more concerning than the same injury that continues to come back.
Like
around.
Julio's hamstrings.
Yeah.
Kyle Phillips having a multitude of injuries at that size is more concerning to me than a 33-year-old Julio Jones who just can't get his hammies right.
Yeah, after a Hall of Fame career.
Sure.
Like we're talking about determining a player's durability at this stage early in his career.
Yeah, and so I guess what's an example of that? Can you, because like Julio, you're right, it's a flawed comparison because Julio was at the end of his career. It was an age thing, but it's still the similar premise, right? Like Julio recurring hamstrings, like that was the thing that kept derailing him over and over and over again. And it was unfortunate for them at the time because they needed him. They needed to lean on him. Couldn't rely upon him because of the hamstrings. So like what's a recent example of that with the Titans? A recurring injury of a similar kind. There has to be one. Well, I mean, I guess Caleb Farley back, right? Caleb Farley back.
College and now at this level.
So, that's probably the best comparison. Kyle Phillips or Caleb Farley.
There's a litany of other things as well.
Well, there's the ACL and the disc injury. Well, there's multiple ACLs and multiple back injuries now. So, I still think it's Phillips because with Caleb Farley, he's still physically equipped. He's still physically equipped to get out there and hold up. Now, whether he holds up or not remains to be seen. But at least with Farley, I have the advantage of size, physical build. Kyle Phillips can't do anything about his size and shape. I mean, his shape he can do stuff about, but his height and his weight, there's really only so much that he can do.
The two players with the most question marks about durability coming into training camp, Kyle Phillips and Christian Fulton, right? Am I missing one? Those two top the list? Where it was
Kyle Phillips and Christian Fulton.
Where it's like, that's what they have to show this year.
That they can be available?
That they can be available. They can be durable, right?
Yeah, there's not, like, Radens doesn't count for that. Because Radens has been available. That's just recently.
That hadn't been the issue.
Okay, those are the two. You're right.
Yeah, so Fulton gotten off to a nice start in that regard.
Phillips has not.
One punt return in Minnesota, IR.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just...
It was immediate.
I mean... And, like, number 36 for the Vikings, we talked about it yesterday. Like, there were highlights of that dude against the Seahawks last weekend. People saying, this is how you make a roster. Because he's just screaming down there as a gunner on punt. Like, he is just out of his mind down the field. And that, he ended up making the Vikings roster as a fringe defensive back. And Those are the kind of plays that matter. It's unfortunate for Kyle Phillips that it resulted in injury, but like that dude, that's what the preseason is for. That dude to try and find a spot to make a team.
Those are the kind of players that play special teams in the NFL.
Correct.
The ones that are screaming down the field.
The insane ones.
Like their heads are cut off. Chosen on the F&M Bank chat says, then stop putting Phillips in certain opportunities to get hurt. If they knew he was going to be important to the wide receiver core, they shouldn't have ever put him on punt return where we had players in place.
Who are your players in place? Like what was predetermined about the punt return situation, about the return, kick return or punt return beyond Kyle Phillips? Here's the thing, like I understand what you're saying.
That's where he brings value. Like that is a big part of Kyle Phillips' value to the Titans is as a punt returner.
And your third wide receiver is going to play special teams in some form or fashion. Like he has to. He has to. So you can't there's two different sides of this argument, right? There's don't play starters in the preseason type of mentality where you're saying, is it even worth Ryan Tannehill if you're just doing it to sell tickets or make the suite holders happy at Nissan Stadium? Is it even worth putting Ryan Tannehill in there 3 snaps to hand it off? You can debate the merits of that. You can debate the merits of Patrick Mahomes playing a quarter and say, how could you possibly put your future Hall of Fame, 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback out there when he's the best thing in the sport and allow him to play a quarter of an exhibition game? Insanity. And then there's the more football-driven side of the argument from people like Blaine Bishop and Andy Reid, who say, or Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin had a great quote the other day where he's saying,
hard to box without sparring.
Right. That was the quote. Tomlin's got a line for everything.
Like you can't train for a boxing match without sparring ahead of it.
And by the way, Mike Vrabel clearly thinks some of that is necessary with the offensive line, the defense that played 3 possessions in the preseason and things like that, because you can't bubble wrap them. It's football. Like to the argument of who was it? Chosen, you said?
Yes.
They knew from last year he was subject to injuries, put him right back on catching punts, and he got popped. That's fine. That could happen to him if he's out there in 11 personnel on offense. It could happen to him if he's returning kicks or punts. It could happen to him in a damn practice because somebody was just running a little too fast, tripped up, and they ended up on the ground together. Like this sport, you're going to get hurt. What we're trying to figure out is if the 185-pound wide receiver is able physically to sustain in the NFL.
Isn't that what the preseason's for, to figure out what you have?
You have to figure. The only reason that Kearis Jackson made the roster is because they figured out that he can return punts. And so now with Kyle Phillips down, they know that Kearis Jackson can do that because they needed a guy to make the roster. Hey, can you return punts? Oh, okay. Look at this. Now you're our 6th wide receiver.
Which there is a degree of that with Kearis Jackson, by the way, who had a hard time staying healthy at Georgia. His numbers would have looked a lot better in college had he stayed healthy consistently at Georgia. That was the issue for him. So that is also a box that I think needs to be checked for Kearis Jackson at this level. Made it through training camp, made it through the preseason. But that's just as important for Kearis in my mind as it is for Kyle Phillips.
Well, and here's the problem. Here's the biggest issue that I think Titans fans, and I don't want to speak for you guys. You're welcome to chime in on the phone lines. We've got plenty of comments in the F&M Bank chat, so I don't want to speak for you. But I think the biggest source of frustration that I've been able to identify with them around specifically this one player, Kyle Phillips, right? We talk about him all the time for 2 years. Two off seasons, 2 training camps, right? All the time. We talk about what kind of plays Kyle Phillips makes, how great the connection is with Ryan Tannehill, all these different things, and then you get a taste of it against the Giants, and that's it.
1 game.
So we see it every day in practice for 2 years, basically, or 2 training camps. The audience might see it in a preseason game, saw a drop of it in the Giants game, and that was it. So the audience has a different perspective than I think the vast majority of Titans media does, because people are saying, y'all hype him up every year, and all he does is get hurt. And they're not wrong, but the hype is warranted. Like, to hear Greg Cosell break down Kyle Phillips' tape coming out of UCLA, Greg doesn't say this about players. He got on that podcast with me and said, Kyle Phillips could roll out of bed and play slot in the NFL. He's our starting slot receiver week 1.
Last year.
Like that. You want to talk about impact rookies? That dude was your impact rookie week 1, ready to go. More ready than Traylon Burks, more ready than Chickaconquo, more ready than NPF. He was ready, and he got hurt.
Does this not strengthen the idea of playing starters in the preseason? It does for me.
Okay.
To me, this is a really good sample size of how practice is different from games, even if it's a preseason game. Kyle Phillips is not getting tackled in training camp the way he's getting tackled on a punt return in a preseason game.
So he can make plays at will.
Or getting taken to the ground against the Giants in week 1 and landing on the shoulder and is essentially being ineffective for the rest of the season.
Trippin' Titan says Kyle Phillips could also roll out of bed and get hurt. That seems mean. 615-737-1045. We'll get some phone calls on this coming up next. There's also a team in the city of Houston, Texas, that is wearing Oilers tribute jerseys. We'll tell you what's going on with that coming up next.
40 years ago, we opened our doors with one mission in mind.
We'll be right back with the top 10 songs of 1983.
To sell quality American-made vehicles at a fair price.
You have arrived.
And we've loved every minute of the ride. Celebrating 40 years of Two Rivers Ford.
Six 737-1045. That's the number. Get to some phone calls, and then we'll tell you what's going on. The city of Houston is wearing some Houston Oilers commemorative jerseys. I'll give you more information on that here in just a second. Goody is in Rochester up first, though. What's happening?
So my biggest question about Phillips is obviously the injury, but if he has such a good connection with Tannehill, why is he trying to return punts? And the other question I had, when do you think he can come off IR?
Why would he return punts? Was that just an IR joke? Is that all the purpose of that call was?
Is that what that was supposed to be?
I think so.
And what do you mean an IR joke?
Like Malcolm Butler IR? I think that was an IR joke.
When people just constantly. Why is that? Explain to me why that's a joke.
Okay,
I'm
so
confused, but I don't understand what's funny about that.
I think that predates the radio show. I probably have to explain that to a lot of people.
Yeah,
So, okay, before they had rules that you could bring players back off IR perpetually. We would get peppered with, when can this player return from IR? Can this player return from IR? Can Delaney Walker be back for the playoffs and things like that, okay? And this was at the very start, and it used to drive me insane that people, would continue to ask this question, even though the answer at the time, now you can actually bring players back off of IR. So now it's
after 4 weeks.
After 4 weeks, correct. That's now a question that you can ask, and I can give you an answer. But it used to be just flatly like, once you shut them down, they were done. And so it just became this long-running joke on social media that, I would get tagged specifically about Malcolm Butler after he broke his wrist in Carolina. And there would just be this constant stream of, can Butler come back off IR? 3HL made a running joke out of it. It was just this barrage that would end up in my social media mentions, so much so that Malcolm Butler, was aware of the joke, and we did an interview, and Malcolm was like, are you the IR guy? It was funny. It's a whole bit from, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, sounds hilarious. But yeah, so 4 weeks. So Kyle Phillips.
Why you could have done that earlier? You didn't need to let me go through the whole thing, because you're right. It's not that funny when I explain it. People get a kick out of it on Twitter. What do you want from me? You're going to stop me 20 minutes ago.
So Kyle Phillips
I didn't want to tell that story. You made me tell that story.
Could technically be eligible to come back week 5 against the Indianapolis Colts. Right? That is as soon as you could see Kyle Phillips back in the
Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically.
But he was, I think it was just a setup for an IR joke. I think it was a poorly executed setup for an IR joke. That's all I think that was. And why would he return punts? Because he needs to make the damn roster. And he can't just be a slot receiver. Your third receiver can't just be a receiver. He has to play special teams. All right. You want to talk about the Houston Cougars wearing Houston Oilers throwbacks? So come hell or high water, the city of Houston is going to get these damn throwbacks. Now, do you think that they had to have the Titans' approval to do this? Because that's the whole thing, right? It's not the NFL. So I guess technically you could put together a uniform scheme of is it Columbia blue? Is that technically the blue?
Baby blue, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't know if there was a more specific blue than baby blue. But either way, the baby blue with the red face masks, the white helmets, white gloves, white pants, right? That's what the Houston Cougars are going to wear this Saturday versus UTSA. So it's paying tribute to the city of Houston's football history and the Oilers.
Paying tribute.
Okay. Grift. It's not paying tribute. It is the thing that I love the most about college football is that it's dirty and soaked in money at every turn.
I mean, obviously they can't use the logo.
No, they don't. The logo is nowhere. Correct.
The color scheme is similar, and it says Houston on the helmet and on the jersey. So they just did their best impression, I guess.
Well, the Titans don't even get to wear the red face masks because they want to wear the red face mask. The league won't let them for whatever reason. I don't know, some arbitrary rule.
And Houston is. Houston
Houston
face mask.
Houston is wearing more of an Oilers uniform than the Titans are.
Did you take media law in college?
Did I?
Yeah. Like, did you learn about parody law?
Oh, I don't think so.
Basically, it's like Weird Al Yankovic obviously made an entire career out of this.
Oh, okay. So like the difference between public domain and what it is that Weird Al does.
So Houston can do this. I suppose it's essentially a parody of the Oilers uniforms.
But it's a tribute, not a parody. They're not selling parody. They're selling tribute.
That's true. You did it, Houston. Congratulations.
Should we just let them do it? Like,
yes. Yes, I think it would be funnier to just let them. Yeah, you can have the Houston Cougars baby blue uniform.
I mean, come on. Like, it's just, what are you so desperate and thirsty as a city? And you can't have the thing that you actually want. So instead, you've got to pawn it off. Do you think city of Houston officials called the Houston Cougars and said, "Hey, we got a chance here"?
No, it's just a smart play by the Houston Athletic Department. That's all it is.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But let me go with the conspiracy theory. If we're going to let the tinfoil hats run wild in the chat, let me have a little fun with it, too.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Reckless speculation. I'm not reporting anything. The city of Houston clearly has called the Houston Cougars and said, let's wear these uniforms. Let's stick it to the Tennessee Titans organization. Bleep the Adams Strunk family and every member of them. We're going to wear them against UTSA. Yeah!
Really, take it to them.
Tyler Dial says, so long as it's not the Texans. Hey, you know what? Give the rights to every football franchise at every level of football except the Houston Texans. Go ahead and do it. That's what I want. Now go full heel the opposite direction. Jacksonville Jaguars, you want to wear the uniforms? Go ahead. We'll loan you the color scheme for a weekend. You want to wear them against the Texans? Even better. UTSA, why not both? Let them both wear the Houston Oilers throwback uniforms. Stupid, but yeah, it says, wait, what color face masks will we be wearing? I think they're like gray or white. I don't think they're not red. That much I know. All right. Coming up next, trades that don't make sense in the NFL. Cut down day had a lot of those flying around, but there's one in particular that had the entire league scratching their heads. I'll tell you what that is coming up next.
It is 10:59. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. General Manager Rand Carthon and head coach Mike Vrabel met with the media earlier this morning. Vrabel was asked about what he's seen from DeAndre Hopkins now that training camp is over and the attention turns to week 1 in New Orleans.
Have really just enjoyed his professionalism, his the way that he's practiced, his communications with Ryan, the receivers, communication with Tim. I mean, he's run a lot of these routes and run a lot of these plays, and enjoy the competitiveness that he shows in practice.
Titans continued to make moves after roster cut day on Tuesday. Wednesday, the team finalized its practice squad, waiving offensive lineman Corey Levin and reportedly placing wide receiver Kyle Phillips on injured reserve. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler also reporting that the Titans are signing defensive lineman Travis Gibson, who had 10 sacks in the last 2 years with the Chicago Bears. Nashville Soccer Club went down to Miami and left with a point on Wednesday, forcing a scoreless draw. Nashville, now the first team in the Lionel Messi era to hold Miami scoreless. They will head back home to host Charlotte at Geodis Park on Saturday night. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What happened? What happened indeed? Second down on this Thursday. Welcome into 104.5.
Moses Moody.
It's been a while since we used that one. The Kendrick Perkins Moses Moody drop. It makes me want to say it incorrectly. Every time I get ready to say Moses Moody.
Moody Moses.
I want to say it Moody Moses every time.
Never gets old.
People just screaming in the chat. I don't know. Can they hear you when you do your updates in the stream?
Yeah.
Okay. People just saying, what happened? Nothing. I just like to give Lucas a hard time anytime he screws up in front of a microphone. I don't know when that started. If that was from the jump on the radio show where just as soon as one of us screwed up in front of the microphone, the other one was there to just kneecap you.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a very natural thing.
Who doesn't like to see their friends fail from time to time? 615-737-1045. That's the number. Now that I've made fun of him, I'll end up drowning in my phlegm at some point during this segment. But in the meantime, we've got some NFL trades to talk about. So, it has been some time since Trey Lance ended up on the Dallas Cowboys. This was a transaction that happened several days ago, and now he is in Dallas as what appears to be, if I'm not mistaken, the third-string quarterback yet again. If Dallas had to pick a backup quarterback today, it would not be Trey Lance. One would think it would be Cooper Rush, who won several games for them in the absence of Dak Prescott last year, and it's just one of the most bizarre trades that I've seen. Now, if you're a Titans fan, some of you may have argued for them to acquire prior to drafting Will Levis and the Malik Willis experiment looking the way that it did at the time. A lot of you guys, once Rand Carthon got hired, wanted one of his first moves to be to trade for Trey Lance, and for that to be the succession plan beyond Malik Willis, beyond Ryan Tannehill, that a former first-round pick, a former third overall pick would be the guy that leads you forward into the future with a GM, a now first-time GM, who had a hand in drafting him. But he ends up out in San Francisco. He ends up in Dallas. Now, reportedly, he said he had a big smile on his face when he found out he was traded to the Cowboys. And I'm trying to figure out why the hell. What makes sense about the Cowboys as a landing spot? There's no opportunity for him to get on the field.
Not in the short term.
Do you think Dak Prescott is in a position where he might lose his job?
No. Jerry Jones framed this as someone to develop behind Dak Prescott because Trey Lance clearly has a long road ahead of him. Now, if I'm Trey Lance, I probably would rather be in a Kyle system-led environment than a Mike McCarthy one that is a lot more unstable shaky ground in Dallas. We've talked about the pressure we think Mike McCarthy is under this year.
Yeah, I just don't ever buy that.
That's how you don't buy what? That he's under pressure
That
this
the
season?
Cowboys coach that gets along really, really well with the owner is under actual pressure. Other than like Jerry's going to say some stuff that an owner doesn't normally say.
Oh, if the Cowboys were to go one and done in the postseason, or hypothetically, you would be surprised if Mike McCarthy got let go?
No, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised, but like I'm not coming in Mike McCarthy hot seat because I felt like we did that for 6 straight years with Jason Garrett, and all Jason Garrett did was keep his job because him and Jerry got along great.
Have you seen what Jerry has said about this?
I have seen some of the quotes, yes.
Yeah, it's just been interesting hearing him talk about it. He didn't tell Dak about it.
Right.
He didn't tell Mike McCarthy about it.
Correct. He's being Jerry.
He's talking about how they wanted to trade to draft Jalen Hurts if he had fallen to them in 2020. Yeah, Jerry being Jerry.
Well, that's the most Jerry thing ever. That last one,
yeah,
that we would have drafted the MVP runner-up.
Yeah, I have the audio. You want to hear that?
Can I please hear from Jerry Jones?
I think had we been able to draft him with next year's 4, the kind of talent he was in this draft, like I just told you 2 years ago, we were looking at Philadelphia quarterback, I'm not going to call any names, but looking at him. Had he fallen to us there, we would have drafted him. It is our plan when we can, but it very seldom happens to have someone of a high enough quality to be there at the right place with our draft pick. This one worked.
Now, I'm sure a lot of people scouted Jalen Hurts, all right? But it's the most Jerry thing ever to after Jalen Hurts, who, by the way, Philadelphia was not sold on heading into last year.
Calling him the Philadelphia quarterback.
Not going to say any names.
I'm not going to name names. Who is he talking about?
Jerry Jones might be my daddy, y'all.
Everybody's looking around, scratching their heads. Philadelphia quarterback.
Marcus Mariota?
Anybody crack that code?
Did Marcus make the active roster in Philly?
He's the backup.
That's kind of wild to me. He looked terrible. We don't have to spend time on Marcus, and I don't want to needlessly bash him. But
I mean, he's a guy that could, the skill set. I mean, there's similarities. Like I get it as a backup quarterback.
Sure, no, I mean, it's the most. If Shane Steichen was there, I'd love it. Was still there, I'd like it a lot more than I liked the way that it looked in the preseason. Anyway,
Sirianni's calling plays for them this season, right?
Yeah. So we'll find out a lot about Nick Sirianni. We'll find out a lot about Shane Steichen, and we'll get to the Colts later today because their GM is in hell.
Speaking of trades that almost didn't make sense,
unmitigated hell. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, come on down. Almost, not quite.
They really tried some stuff up there.
So, but like the Trey Lance would be excited about the opportunity to go from one third string spot to another is just bizarre. Because if you're going to call him a developmental situation behind Dak Prescott, okay, that's fine. Cooper Rush, I mean, didn't Cooper Rush start like 4-0 last season? I need to look up Cooper Rush's starting record. But the idea that Trey Lance is going to develop in a way that doesn't involve Trey Lance playing seems pretty counterintuitive to me about the entirety of the Trey Lance experience. Isn't the whole thing that he needs to play football for anybody to discern whether this guy is worth a damn or not? And I don't mean to put it that harshly, and it's not always as black and white as I've just laid it out, but like, think about the other places that name one spot. I bet you could do this with several teams. Name one spot where it would have made more sense to trade for Trey Lance.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, easy.
I don't know because I don't know what Trey Lance is. I have no idea what what are you saying? Trey Lance should be a backup in Philly over Marcus Mariota?
No, Trey Lance should be given an opportunity to gut it out this year in Tampa. Tampa is a great example of this. In Arizona, does Trey Lance not have a higher ceiling theoretically than Josh Dobbs? And they're in a weird situation
Arizona
with Kyler.
would have made more sense, yeah.
Arizona
makes sense.
Tampa. There are plenty of other quarterback situations around the league where it's kind of more nebulous.
You're talking about candidates for the number 1 overall pick next year to draft Caleb Williams.
To just find out if he can play.
Yeah.
Bad teams. Dallas is arguably the second best roster in the conference after Philadelphia, maybe San Francisco, however you want to tier them. Dak Prescott's going to play. Dak Prescott's not really in any danger of losing his job. The coach is going to get fired before they get rid of that quarterback.
Yeah, and Lance is on the active roster.
And Dak is Jerry's guy. Jerry keeps his guys to a fault. because Jerry does things like trade for Trey Lance without telling Dak Prescott, without telling Mike McCarthy. And, potentially may or may not have fathered Robert Walsh, who's to say.
Jerry Jones might be my daddy, y'all.
Charlie in Franklin is next. Hey, Charlie.
I hate to mess with your rhythm today, but I want to vent about the Ryder Cup. Zach Johnson ought to be horsewhipped, run out of town. He has put politics into golf. He selected Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas because of camaraderie, not thinking about Jordan Spieth was 28 out of 30 that finished in America. Justin Thomas was not even in the top 30. Jordan Spieth in 4 Ryder Cups has never won a singles match. The theory of the Ryder Cup is you get 6 players get to be they're automatic, and then the captain picks the next 6. Well, he was about 66% efficient. We had guys like Keegan Bradley, who would have been a great player, who's playing really good now. We got Lucas Glover that's putting the eyes out of it. We got Cam Young. We got 25 other players that could have been on the Ryder Cup. And who do they pick but politics? Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Now, you might think that I'd get after Charlie for derailing our football conversation with golf, but I happen to think he makes a pretty good point. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I follow golf on a day-by-day basis, but the Ryder Cup is a big enough event that it's always worth paying attention to, if not betting.
And to Charlie's credit, he came in and apologized for breaking up what we were talking about, but he didn't really break up what we were talking about because we were talking about Jerry Jones hanging on to his guys almost to a fault.
And
what
also
did Zach
fathering
Johnson do? I don't think Zach Johnson fathered Robert
Jerry
Walsh.
Jones might be my daddy, y'all.
But hanging on to his guys. Just an old boys club at the Ryder Cup.
I mean,
this
that's
year.
sports. It really is. Like, that's the thing that Mike Vrabel gets accused of the most, is he hires his pals from Houston and the Patriots to come and do the things like that. There is a tendency. Now, I will say, like, Hank Haney says controversial things. He's Tiger Woods' former coach, and he's written books off that. He's had a great career being Tiger Woods' former coach. But he really took Zach Johnson out the other day for sticking to the boys club narrative. Nick in Nashville is up next. Hey, Nick.
Guys, man, you know what, man? Utah, Florida plays tonight. Tennessee plays Virginia on Saturday. My biggest rant is, man, don't break the cycle up, man. I'm cool with the Ryder Cup, but we don't hear no Ryder Cup. We don't hear no NASCAR. We don't want to hear no tennis, U.S. Open. It's all football right now, guys. So if you call me, and make sure it's a football call, because that's the biggest rant right now.
I looked at Lucas as soon because did it say Ryder Cup on there?
Yes.
Okay. I looked at Lucas as soon as I took the call because I do have a tendency to just take the calls when they're there.
Charlie and Franklin could say he wants to talk about bunny rabbits, and we would take the call.
I would always take Charlie and Franklin's call.
But why don't we talk Tennessee, Virginia?
We can do that coming up next. So we had some calls throughout the course of the week. Talk about the Vols. Vols have a game this weekend. It's here in Nashville. Adam Sparks is going to be here covering it for the Knoxville News Sentinel. He joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. Hey, bud.
How we doing?
We're swell. We're excited to have football back in our lives. I'm curious, do you get a lot of feedback from Vols fans about playing their opener at Nissan Stadium? Because I have to imagine, I know it's a sellout at this point, but I have to imagine that some of them probably aren't crazy about that idea.
Yeah, it depends on how much they know of the background of it. If they know that it was a game at BYU and that it was a road game and now it's a game that's 2 hours away, then they're like, this is a little better. If they think this could have been a home game, which it was never going to be, then they're ticked off because I've heard from it. Yeah, a number of fans the last couple of weeks. It's like, why can't they just play in Neyland? Why do we have to already in the state? So why do we have to go to Nashville? But this is they get a couple $1 million off the top out of this to pay to buy out the contract from the BYU game. They still get some money on top of that. Danny White wants to be in the Nashville market, donor base, fan base, all those things, recruiting. But yeah, I mean, so it depends on if you know what game it replaced.
So, Adam, you're saying it would be better for Tennessee fans. They'd prefer to drive a couple hours to see Tennessee beat up on Virginia than go to Mountain Time to play a bunch of married 27-year-olds.
Yeah, it was something like that. Now, I would prefer BYU just because I like the road games at places you don't normally go. I'm afraid when the SEC conference schedule expands, if and when it does, then we won't have these non-conference games where you go to cool different places. And I've been to BYU a couple times before. It's just a cool place to see a game, but I think those are going away. But it's good for me because I get to go back where I lived and worked for so long.
Well, I mean, the BYU game as an opponent might be slightly better than what Virginia figures to be when they open here in just a few days. What is kind of the vibe around Tennessee right now, understanding that they are massive favorites heading into a game where they're going to be in front of what is basically a home crowd? How has Josh Heupel kind of managed the messaging on that?
Yeah, I think, most people expect this to just be a rout. I will say Virginia was bad last year. They're probably going to be bad this year. I don't know what they're really good at. They could be improved, but I don't know really what they're good at if you look at what they had last year, what they returned. So people expect a blowout. Josh Heupel, when he has played mediocre teams, he's put up 50 routinely. And so that's what people expect out of this one. There's going to be some things that they have to work out offensively. I don't think Cooper Mays is going to play. I think if he doesn't, I don't think he will. I think that's could be a huge issue at center because if you pay attention closely, especially before practice is closed, what they were doing at center, they were moving Ollie Lane from guard to center, and they were plugging in a backup guard into his spot. And then that didn't work for a while, so they took a tackle that had never snapped the ball at the center, and then they tried a couple other guards. And if you keep trying different people, that means whatever you're trying isn't working. And so Cooper Mays is so integral to that offense running really, really fast and really efficient. And to plug in somebody new, which I think would probably be Ollie Lane, to plug in somebody new there and then have to shift around the offensive line, it could potentially slow them down a little bit. So I'll be interested to see how they make those adjustments. There's this idea that Joe Milton for sure is just going to come in and throw for 400 yards. And I think he'll have a good game, but a lot of these things are assumed, and I don't think you can really assume because they do have enough new pieces there.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought up the offensive line because I don't know that at least our show has done a good enough job focusing in on the amount of changing parts that they have there. Because Milton is being talked about as the big question mark, right? Can he replicate or come close to the kind of production that Hendon Hooker had in that kind of offense? But the offensive line, as you just articulated, because of the pace of play that they have, is as important, or almost as important, as whether or not Milton pans out for this offense, no?
Yeah, and maybe Virginia doesn't have enough of a pass rush that it matters. But Tennessee's offense, despite people thinking it's a passing offense, it's predicated on the run. And once the run is established, and then everybody is spread out in the way that they do these wide splits for the wide receivers. Once everybody's spread out, then you can get throwing lanes, and then you start going vertical in the passing game. If you can't establish the run, that screws up everything. If the center cannot get the fill-in center cannot get the offense moving efficiently enough, you lose the pace that is an advantage. If you can't protect Joe Milton with 5 offensive linemen, then you're suddenly having to bring in another tight end that takes a wide receiver off the field. They want to go 3 wide. They would like to use 4 wide receivers in the rotation. So then you're limiting that. It's just sort of a domino effect where if a couple things go bad, it affects everything else. Now, I think offensively they'll be pretty good. But even people sort of had retcons the Orange Bowl and how that went. And they think, well, Joe Milton was the MVP, threw for 3 touchdowns. That was that was a great offensive game. But he threw for 251 yards, not a huge amount. They punted like 7 times in that game, which was a season high by far. They didn't come out of the gates great. So they were good enough offensively in the Clemson game in the Orange Bowl, and they were good enough in the Vanderbilt game before that. So, if you look at how they finished last year offensively, you could have the thought that they're going to be really good offensively this year, especially after the offseason, but it's not a guarantee.
Adam Sparks, Knoxville News Sentinel, is here talking Vols opening with Virginia this Saturday at Nissan Stadium. You can hear coverage of that right here on 104.5 The Zone on the Vol Network.
Adam, are you as intrigued as I am about what this wide receiver rotation is going to look like, where Josh Heupel has yet to really go more than 3 deep when it comes to the guys that are rotating in? And now with Deontay Thornton coming in, it feels like you have 4 guys that you're going to have a hard time keeping off the field.
I mean, I'll be intrigued if it happens because this will be 3 seasons now. Myself and other media members have asked the question of, hey, you're going to go beyond just 3 wide receivers? And it's always, yeah, we're going to be deeper and we're going to have a deeper rotation. And then you watch the game on Saturday and that doesn't happen. The truth is this usually works itself out. The last 2 years it's worked itself out. They started with 3 guys. They've ended with 3 with 3 different guys, usually 2 that they began with and another. An injury will take somebody out. Somebody will not be as in tune with the offense. They'll be replaced after 3 or 4 games, and then they'll go with those 3. So, that's how Velus Jones Jr. got on the field the first year instead of Jalen Hyatt. That's how Ramel Keaton ended up on the field last year because Cedric Tillman got hurt. It usually works itself out that you end up with 3. Now, they'll have the luxury of saying they're going deeper into the rotation these early games, because if they get up 4 touchdowns, they can play, 6 wide receivers. Austin Peay next week, if they're up 40, they can go as deep as they want. So they'll be able to work through this. I think the bigger question is how many wide receivers are playing in the regular rotation at Florida in a couple weeks.
The secondary was under as much scrutiny as any position group in 2022. Adam, we've talked about this before. We talked about it heading into spring ball. You mentioned players like Gabe Giudice-Lally, who have come in as transfers and the role that he's taken on. Where are we at now with the state of the secondary?
They have a lot of bodies. They claim that means they have depth. Just because you have a lot of guys that are even, maybe that's balanced. That's not necessarily depth. You can be balanced and not very good. I think Danico Slaughter's good, the corner that used to be a safety, that used to be a nickelback. He can play anywhere. I think he's going to start at corner. Yeah, they do have a couple pieces. I was intrigued by the fact that midway through camp, they had Andre Turrentine at safety running with the ones. Andre Turrentine is a Nashville kid. He played at Innsworth. He was at Ohio State for a couple years, transferred last year. He's risky. He gambles quite a bit at safety. Makes a lot of plays, but then also gives up some plays, and that's not what they want to be. They want to be a defense that just does not blow coverages, and that's got them in trouble the last couple of years because they've relied on veterans that are in the right place but are really not that good in coverage. And, they think they're going to be better because all these guys are back, but I'll believe it when I see it because they haven't been yet, and they have a lot of 5th-year, 6th-year seniors back there. And I don't believe you get better at coverage beyond the first couple of years of college.
Arion Carter is somebody that Vols fans are excited about. It seems like the staff is very excited about him. We had him on the show when he was a high school football player here in Smyrna. We were incredibly impressed with him, not just as a player, but kind of where he is at in his as a mindset, the mentality of him at that young of an age. Really kind of, I don't want to say it caught me off guard, but was something that really stood out to me. What is kind of the sense around him and his impact that he'd be able to make? Is he somebody who's considered to be an impact freshman on this team heading into the 2023 season?
He's going to get a chance to be. The take on him is he's very aggressive. He'll sometimes get out of position, but he's so athletic and so good and so instinctive that he will make up for a mistake by using that athleticism. So he'll get out of position but still make the play. And they've sort of wrestled with that all through camp of whether or not they can put somebody out there with the first-team defense. Now, he's not going to start, but to rotate him in if he is missing some assignments because he can make up for it. So that'll be trial and error in the games. To some extent, he doesn't remind me of linebackers that they've had. He reminds me more of Byron Young 2 years ago. The Byron Young, it was the same thought with him, that he would get out of position, but he was so athletic and so fast that he would still get a sack or a TFL, making up for his own mistake. That's where Arion Carter is. And, they do have games with Virginia and Austin Peay where he can sort of work those things out. But they're looking. They want him to play, and he's going to get a chance to make that case early in the season.
So you talked about the secondary a little bit. A lot of bodies there. You're not necessarily convinced about the quality depth. So where do you feel this defense takes the biggest jump? Because that does feel like the best way to raise Tennessee's floor, right? From that 7-8 win range to something closer to that 9-win range.
Interior defensive line, I think, they were good there last year. People tend to think that they weren't good on defense last year. They scoring defense, they jumped up from like 90th to like 32nd from Josh Heupel's first year to a second, and most of that was because of the run defense, that they were good in the middle. Omari Thomas is in the middle. Elijah Simmons is injured, and I don't think he plays this game. But they've got a lot of good young guys in the middle. Tyler Barron is at strong side defensive end. He's been around a long time. Keenan Peely, the BYU transfer, is a big physical linebacker. I think he will play the run well. I'm curious to see if he's athletic enough to run in space and cover receivers. But I think in the middle, stopping the run, interior defensive line, I think is where they're going to be good. And the name that people are going to know more after this weekend, I think, is Omar Norman Lott. That's a guy, or Omar Norman Lott is Arizona State interior defensive lineman, but he plays more like a defensive end. Really good pass rusher. Rodney Garner, the D-line coach, loves him, says he's slippery, he's very athletic. He's a guy that they need in that interior, and I think you're going to see him have a couple TFLs against Virginia.
Lucas incredibly pleased with himself because he whispered that name into my ear right before you said it, Adam. your preview magazines have paid off, bud. Congratulations. Well done by you.
Adam, Rodney Garner has never been the type to gaslight media about a player, right? So when I hear him talk about Omar Norman Lott, I take him for his word.
Yeah, I mean, yes, Rodney Garner has coached a ton of NFL guys, and you kind of have the sense that he's a little bit like a scout, like he sees it in 30 seconds, he knows it. And when he saw Norman Lott on the field, he came out and said, "Yep, he's got it. I can work with this." And so I'm intrigued.
I don't know if it goes against your journalistic integrity to ask you whether I should take the over 55.5 or not, but I'm thinking about it.
I wouldn't touch any openers at all. Nothing this week.
You know
I'm
what?
not a gambling man, but if I was, I would not touch anything in the season opener.
That's the best gambling advice that you could possibly give out.
Don't do it.
Whether it's college football week 1 or the NFL week 1. Just stay the hell away from it. It's going to be weird. Adam Sparks, KnoxNews.com. That's where you can read him. Football season is upon us, and he is a must-follow and read throughout the course of the Tennessee Vols campaign. Appreciate your time, buddy.
All right, guys. Y'all have a good one. That's
Adam Sparks with us on 104.5 The Zone. Yeah, just best gambling advice ever. Don't do it.
Just don't.
Just don't. I woke up this morning and I got up early, all right? to 55 text messages in a group text with my buddies that is labeled Gambler's Digest.
So the over on 55.5 did not hit on the text messages you received this morning.
No, the over.
Your gambling chat.
But it might in the Tennessee-Virginia game. The level of confidence that guys, and I can't speak to women's gambling habits. I know some of you do bet. In fact, a lot more female sports fans bet than I had realized, but either way. The idea that dudes just definitively give out their picks like that in a group text and just send their buddies straight into financial ruin alongside them if you take any of your buddies' picks in that group text. I don't trust any of you. Get out of here.
In.
Literally, lock it in. People, so somebody sent some advice from their wife. Tracy thinks it's the Utes by 4.5.
That's probably better than whatever research anybody else would drum up. But, yeah, I don't know. Utes without Cam Rising tonight.
I know, so, cousin Cam, down for the count.
They are in Utah. They'll have the home field advantage. I think it'll be a really good game, probably a low-scoring game, if I had to guess, tonight between Florida and Utah. I am fascinated by what this Tennessee defense will do this year. Because to hear Adam talk about the secondary in that, yeah, there's more bodies, but does that make them better is interesting to me. They bring in a lot of freshmen. Yeah, Keenan Peely is a linebacker that they bring in. Like, you beef up every level of the defense with the transfers, Omar Norman-Lott from Arizona State. But where will that improve that group the most? I tend to think it's the front seven. So I don't know how much of a jump this secondary takes. I'm really excited about what Danico Slaughter can be. Sounds like he's going to play a lot of corner this year for Tennessee. He's kind of been moved all over the place. But that front seven, if they can just get to the quarterback, and they're really deep at inside linebacker with Aaron Beasley coming back off that massive performance against Clemson in the Orange Bowl. Keenan Peely, who Adam does have some questions about, but a really experienced guy. I joked about BYU being a bunch of married 27-year-olds. Keenan Peely, the BYU transfer, is literally a married 25-year-old. You have the local product, Elijah Herring.
Why are you attacking what is it? Sacrimony of marriage? Is that right?
No, I'm not attacking the sacrimony of marriage.
Is that a word, sacrimony?
Yes.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But BYU is just a bunch of grown men, and you got one of those in the transfer portal.
It felt like you were attacking the sanctity of marriage.
No, nothing like that. But can Tennessee get to the quarterback? I mean, that will be the biggest thing. Can they support this secondary this year? They're definitely deeper, but does more bodies mean improvement with the front seven the way that Adam Sparks doesn't necessarily think it does with the secondary?
No, I liked the way that he put that. And the offensive line, so like, in all seriousness, because again, this gambling group text that I have is loving the Vols in all ways, shapes, or form on Saturday. And I'm not saying that they won't win by a substantial margin, but like, so the deal with Cooper Mays, that has the ability to impact their operation as much as anything not named quarterback.
Yeah, that's where you see growing pains, right? Typically on the offensive line, week one, and you don't have your Marshall. I mean, Cooper Mays is the leader of that offensive line.
How much time is he expected to miss?
Something that we're just not really privy to. I mean, Heupel announced, I think, 2 weeks ago that
Do we know what the injury is?
I have not seen what the injury is. That doesn't mean that Tennessee media that's covering it doesn't know, but we knew a couple weeks ago that Cooper Mays was going into surgery.
That would have been a good follow-up for Sparks. That's my fault.
Well, and we knew that his status for week one was in doubt. So to me, it sounds like it's kind of a week-to-week thing with Mays. You have Austin Peay week 2. You play a weak Virginia team week 1. Although if there's anything Virginia can boast that is a strength, it's probably that front that does happen to be missing its best player in Chico Bennett. The local guy that we talked about, total freak thing, getting up after taking a knee after a scrimmage, stiffened up, and he's out for a little bit. So he's not playing on Saturday. There's really nothing for me that Virginia can hang its hat on to garner an advantage over Tennessee other than the Vols having those growing pains with some moving parts on the offensive line and just what that looks like early on. Because Milton's been able to establish that chemistry with all these receivers. He's played with all these guys. He kind of has that advantage that most quarterbacks coming in to take over an offense wouldn't have. Not so much with the offensive line. So that'll be something to watch, certainly, especially in the run game, with them returning some guys in the backfield as well.
615-737-1045. Have we gotten – where the hell is our guy in Bethpage, Scott and Bethpage.
I miss Scott.
Where is Scott and Bethpage?
If you're out there, man.
It's college football season. Would you get a different work schedule?
Come back to us.
Nobody's told us that they love us in a very, very long time. We're needy.
Not feeling loved lately, Scott.
In fact, I feel the opposite. I feel betrayed. I feel abandoned. Left astray. Led astray. Both of them. Sacrimony. 615-737-1045. That's the number if you want to talk some Vols. We can do that. Potential CFP newcomers, college football playoff newcomers. Who has the opportunity to crack that list for the first time in 2023? We'll talk about it coming up next. I swear to God, Blaine Bishop is turning those Cool Ray things into a bit like Bert does with his zone updates. 104.5, The Zone. Cracks me up. Welcome back. Potential college football playoff newcomers. So, as you head into the 2023 season, I guess we're already here with week 0 having been underway.
Hello, welcome. We did it, everybody.
Are you going to start turning that into a bit the way that Pate does? Pate has those pictures where he goes, however many weeks it is of him looking, searching in a cornfield, and then emerges victorious, arms in the air.
I'm no Josh Pate.
Well, nobody would dispute this. Apparently, I'm no you, according to the chat.
You're no me, I'm no Josh. There's a pecking order here.
Yeah.
Although we have a very similar build, I'm no Josh Pate.
Who? You and Pate?
Yeah. It's like looking in a mirror, man.
You better hope not. You better hang on to that hair for as long as humanly possible, bud.
No, Pate is much stronger than me.
Yes, that's the joke.
In case anybody didn't know. Josh Pate is huge.
Phrasing. College football playoff newcomers. So, for the purposes of this exercise, we know that Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, LSU, the usuals, right? Michigan. And I don't even want to say the usuals because there's never been the same combination of 4 teams in the college football playoff in any iteration. So you do get different matchups every year. Now, whether it's Clemson or Oklahoma or Notre Dame that gets in, there are going to be some consistent presences and have been in the duration of this thing's existence, but there is the opportunity for new while we still have the 4-team playoff. And the 12-team playoff obviously is going to complicate this thing in a new way. So with that being said, who strikes you this season, you being the audience, wherever you're listening, in your car, on your phone, or FM radios elsewhere around the state, who do you think is the best chance to become a college football playoff newcomer this year? It could be Tennessee. Tennessee's got a great argument. They're the biggest threat to Georgia in the SEC East by a mile as we try to figure out everything that's going on with Kentucky and new quarterbacks and returning coordinators and what is South Carolina actually? Do I trust Spencer Rattler to be that, what he was in the last third of the season, or is there going to be some kind of regression to the mean? Tennessee has the opportunity to be one of these teams. But I also think there's a couple of other good nominees that are out there, because the first one that jumps into my mind is USC. Now, USC, as Lucas famously documents, you're just a Lincoln Riley defense hater.
I just don't get it.
It's fair.
I just don't get it. It's again, the definition of insanity is what Lincoln Riley has done in the pursuit of a national championship year after year, and shockingly getting the same results.
I could not agree with you more. It seems like somebody who's paid that much money would be able to figure that out from time to time, or at least hire somebody else to. Now, the chat is nominating a couple. Lonzo Wright says Alabama. They've obviously been to the playoff before. Doesn't qualify.
Many a time.
Top tier says Florida State, who has a big game this Sunday against Brian Kelly's Tigers, his family. Brian Kelly and LSU featured to be one of the top teams and potentially the top team in the West, depending on how this season goes.
Florida State, I think, should be on that list. You tell me who you think should not be on this list.
Okay.
I've put together a list of potential new kids on the block to the playoff this year.
Love list. Does it say, did you write new kids on the block in your notes?
I did.
Okay.
I did with a new kids on the block concert poster.
If we were good at this, we would have come back with new kids on the block.
Okay. USC. I'm going to put USC in there. I have no faith in them.
No.
But I'm going to put them in there.
They've got the best quarterback. They've got a coach that knows how to score. They should be in there.
I think they get cannibalized at some point in what is a very strong Pac-12, but they should be in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Florida State, I think, absolutely should be in the conversation because they come out of a very weak ACC. If they can get a week 1 win against LSU, they are very much in play to get to the college football playoff. Tennessee, I think, is in there simply because of how close the Vols were a year ago. A win against South Carolina, Tennessee's most likely in the playoff. I have Penn State in here. As they bring in Drew Aller at quarterback. Their defense figures to be one of the best in the country under Manny Diaz. The two very obvious roadblocks are Michigan and Ohio State, but I think they should be called a contender. Texas should be on this list. And I have Texas A&M on this list as potential
A&M.
newcomers to the college football playoff.
Yeah,
So,
and Pate mentioned this yesterday. In fact, let's hear from Josh Pate of Late Kick Live. He's out at Utah, Florida. He flew out yesterday. Lucas asked him the question, well, you phrase it how you want to phrase it. You set this audio up.
I asked him, because we talk about high ceilings, low floors. I asked him who has the widest range of outcomes this season, the highest ceiling and the lowest floor.
A&M could be every bit as bad as they were last year, but A&M could also be 11-1 just because they have a top 5 roster, which, by the way, people don't believe. They don't believe A&M's got a top 5 roster. They do. It just shows you how bad they've been, that they've underachieved with it. But we keep something called the BCR, the blue chip ratio, and Bud Elliott tracks it all the time for us. And they've got a top 5 roster. I think they're number 4 in the sport. Like, not in the SEC, in the sport. So they went and got Bobby Petrino, and that's all anyone's talking about. But they've got just stacks of talent littered across that roster. So if that talent just played to its capability, if coaching got out of the way, for lack of a better term, they could be an 11-1 team. They could be a 5-7 team. And so if you want to talk, that's like a 7-story building when you go ceiling to floor there.
I lost track of what Josh Pate just said because the stream just found out what Lucas's phone passcode is.
Hey, can we stay on track, please?
You want to tell people what your phone passcode is?
No,
you have to change it now anyway.
There's no reason to.
People are literally watching your every move. How does it feel?
No.
Tell them.
Tell them. No. There's no.
If you don't, I will.
It's inconsequential. It's completely inconsequential. All right. It's easy to remember. Get off my back about the passcode.
Tell them.
Let's stop talking about the passcode
now.
No, I'm not going to do it.
6969.
It is just about 12 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Titans general manager Rand Carthon and head coach Mike Vrabel met with the media earlier this morning. And after the Titans signed Nick Folk, traded for Nick Folk, sending a 7th-round pick to the New England Patriots, and added Cade York to the practice squad, the former Browns kicker, Vrabel was asked about the pecking order at the kicker position.
Well, Nick's our kicker. Nick is our kicker, and feel really good about him and about what he's done and what he will do. Felt like it was a good opportunity to bring Cade in here to allow him to develop and work and see where he's at.
On Wednesday, the Titans finalized their practice squad and waived offensive lineman Corey Levin and reportedly will place wide receiver Kyle Phillips on injured reserve. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reporting that the Titans are also signing defensive lineman Travis Gibson, who had 10 sacks in the last 2 years with the Chicago Bears. Tonight, week 1 of the college football season officially kicks off. Florida visits 14th-ranked Utah for a 7 p.m. kickoff. You can hear the game right here on The Zone, courtesy of Westwood One. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is upon us. Welcome in, welcome back. Happy to have you either way. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved on this Thursday. You also have the F&M Bank chat at your disposal. How you do that is you live stream the radio show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. And if you're lucky, you might just discover one of our cell phone passcodes, as the chat successfully did to Lucas. Now everybody else in your life who has my phone number is reaching out to betray you because your roommate, Blue, has texted me. Ask him about our Wi-Fi name and password. You want to do that on the air?
Good on that.
The fear in your eyes. It's always funny, right? When you have, we're going to talk about some Titans. Kyle Phillips has been placed on IR. Will Levis apparently had eye surgery. We'll get to that here in just a second. So we'll see if that has an impact on what the rookie quarterback is able to do or not do in his rookie season. But it's always funny when you set up your Wi-Fi for the first time because you see what everybody else's Wi-Fi names are around you. So I bought my house a couple of years ago. They built a couple of houses next to me in the last couple of years. There was a group of 4 girls, probably, 3-4 years younger than us, 25, 26, living in that house. And it was funny because their Wi-Fi was, I don't want to give out the address, but the address, this is going to be bad. I'm not going to be able to do this without giving out the address.
Like the street address?
Not the street address, but 1602 instead of B, Baddies, right? 1602 Baddies. So
Okay.
we'll just make up a number with a B, Baddies. The other one was a Lannister pays for net or something like that, or a Lannister always repays for net. Like the Lannister thing from Game of Thrones. It's always funny to me to see what people's Wi-Fi names are. What's yours?
It's, what's on the grid here? It's Kyle Phillips placed on IR this week.
It's a little lengthy.
Yeah.
Tough when guests come over to.
We could be more economical with our words.
Smart. Yeah, Kyle Phillips placed on IR. Wide receiver
Reportedly,
opportunities.
worth saying. We haven't seen that transaction, right, from the team on Phillips placed on injured reserve.
Oh, no, I thought I got an email yesterday. Is that not right?
The transaction email yesterday finalized the practice squad and made official the waiving of Corey Levin and the claiming off waivers of defensive back Kendall Vildor, as well as waiving from IR Josh Thompson and Jonathan Ward, but nothing with Kyle Phillips.
That's probably the transaction that Vrabel was saying. We'll keep you updated on that.
Jordan Schultz reported
broke
that.
the news yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay, so not official yet. By the way, Corey Levin's going to be back on the active roster. I don't think that's going to be a long-term situation.
Why do you say that?
Because he's going to be back on the active roster.
So what's the trying to set you up to give us the purposes of waiving Corey Levin on the day where you finalize the practice squad and bring in Kindle Vildor.
Well, I can't speak to their logic behind it necessarily. All I know is that transaction is not long for this world and that there will be a corresponding transaction as a result, but I don't think Corey Levin's going to be off their active roster for an extended period of time.
They're at 53 at the moment, right? With Travis Gibson, that reported signing from Jeremy Fowler.
And he's in the locker room.
Yeah.
Even if Rand and Mike won't talk about it, he's sitting in the locker room. So yes, there will be corresponding moves. It's just they're going to keep churning. Bottom of the roster.
So they're at 53. Kyle Phillips placed on injured reserve. That leaves room for Kindle Vildor. Corey Levin waived. That leaves room for Travis Gibson. So there would need to be a room to bring Corey Levin, a move to bring Levin back.
Yep, correct. Now, meantime, the Levin is already back. Offensive line, Murray got cut. That's right. So looking at the Kyle Phillips situation, Kyle Phillips, the question that we started the show with, is it more concerning to have a player who has a recurrence of one specific injury? Now, of course, not all injuries are created the same, right? Recurring broken bones is not, maybe you got a calcium deficiency, I don't know. But recurring broken bones is not the same as recurring concussions. That's not rocket science. But is it better to have a player who has a recurrence of the same injury versus a player who keeps dealing with all manner of injuries that keep costing them time? Different injuries, but with the same result. The answer is neither. If you have players who are unavailable, then they're not. I don't want to say that they're not worth much to the football team. That seems a bit cold, but you understand where I'm going with that. They're not able to produce. They're not available. They don't factor in. And so for all the practice highlights that Lucas and I can tell you about or that you read about in Jimmy Wyatt's 6 Things to Watch this week or see Tehran's breakdowns and all these different things, a lot of them feature Kyle Phillips and his success. But Lucas pointed out correctly in the first hour, what's the difference between Kyle Phillips in a game and Kyle Phillips in practice? Kyle Phillips gets tackled in a game. Kyle Phillips does not get tackled in practice.
He does, but not like in a game.
No, he doesn't go to the ground. They're not landing on him. It's basically the body weight rule for quarterbacks.
Because he's never really had trouble staying on the practice field, right? Like, we didn't get accustomed to seeing Kyle Phillips go back to the locker room during training camp.
No, I think not this year. No, he might have had a period of time. Maybe I think the hamstring thing might have happened like out of practice last year.
I'm talking about during training camp, like
no,
leading
not
up
this
to
year,
the season, before the hits start to kind of compile.
Yeah. Well, it didn't take much for him to compile. As a hit in the Giants game knocked him out, and then the hammy basically kept him out for the rest of the time. Now, with that being said, what does this impact on your offense is the question. So if I tell you that Kyle Phillips is lost for a period of time, at least 4 games to start the regular season, placed on IR, going to miss at least 4. We'll see what beyond that happens. Who is the first name that jumps into your mind as to the opportunity that would benefit that player next in line? Who do you think that is?
Jackson, because of the punt return game.
You think it's Kearis Jackson?
I think he is this team's punt returner. I think that is why he is on this active roster.
So okay. You went immediately to special teams. Now, do you have that same feeling offensively? Do you think that Kearis Jackson is the beneficiary of Kyle Phillips' absence on offense? Because you're right. He's the backup punt returner. I fully expect that Kearis Jackson, for those 4 weeks, or at least for the first week, we'll see how he handles it in live game reps. But for that first game, Kearis Jackson going to be their punt returner. Offensively, is it still Kearis Jackson?
It could mean some snaps for Jackson in the slot, but I would tend to think it just means more targets allocated elsewhere. Well, what would you say?
NWI.
Right.
So, I think you're about to. I think Titans fans are going to be moaning and groaning about the idea that NWI is quote unquote going to be a starting wide receiver for them this year. His value, such that it is, and you can debate the merits of his value if you want to. I'm not going to. The coaching staff doesn't. NWI, as your 4th or 5th wide receiver, knows all 3 positions in your offense: X, Z, slot. Now, Hopkins, and it doesn't have to be, by the way, one answer. Hopkins, was one of the most productive slot wide receivers in football the year that Tim Kelly was his offensive coordinator. They found different ways to deploy DeAndre Hopkins to take advantage of different matchups. Now, this is a trend that we've seen in the league. You can try and, plug one dude in to be your slot receiver all time. But in reality, most offenses try and take advantage of matchups, and if that means moving A.J. Brown into the slot, then you deploy A.J. Brown in the slot. NWI into the slot. Or Hopkins, if the better matchup is available to you and the easier access throw, the more reliable throw, the thing that's going to move the chains, whatever that might be, in whatever first down, second down, third down situation that you have, there can be multiple answers as to a solution. But NWI, I think, is going to be the biggest beneficiary on offense. Kyrus Jackson is going to take the punt returning duties.
It'll be really interesting in New Orleans to see how many different guys get snaps in the slot.
Yeah. Because the Chad Casual, for example, on YouTube, you can interact on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. He says Chris Moore is who's going to get those targets, I bet. He feels that Moore has overtaken NWI. So you might be correct. I don't think that Moore has overtaken NWI in the sense that if DeAndre Hopkins or Treylon Burks is to go down, who's their backup? Chris Moore. Chris Moore is a backup to your, we'll call Treylon their X, right? He's your backup X. Now, with Westbrook-Ikhine, I know that he can play all three, or I know that he knows all three positions within their offense. Again, you can debate whether he can play them well enough to your satisfaction or not. We had people arguing that NWI needed to have the skill set of a wide receiver 1 earlier when he's wide receiver 5, and I'm not gonna tolerate that narrative. It's nonsense. So I think that Chris Moore is your backup for Hopkins and Burks first and foremost. The beauty of NWI is that he can back up all three. That's why he exists on the roster.
It's part of why he exists.
Why he exists on the roster. There is special teams value to NWI as well. They also like his effort. They like his ability. They like the fact that he's willing to gut it out in ways that some players aren't sometimes. So I think Chris Moore is more if something happens to Hopkins or Burks, and I think NWI can be that for all three of them, but I think Chris Moore is the primary backup for the other two.
Did he largely played on the outside in the preseason, right?
More.
Chris Moore.
Yes.
Who was? I just lost it. Corey in the F&M Bank chat asks, could Tyjae Spears get some time in the slot?
So there's, it's interesting to talk to coaches about this because a lot of them will tell you that, and I'm not just talking about the Titans, I'm talking league-wide. Like, a lot of them will tell you should be able to get through an entire game with your running back in the slot. Like, if you needed to, if you had to play your running back as a slot receiver, you should be able to manage to get through a game that way, especially if he's just specifically there for third down purposes. Now, obviously, Derrick Henry is not somebody that you're going to run, in empty sets the entire game. That's nonsensical. You wouldn't do that. But with Tyjae Spears, could you run empty sets with Tyjae Spears? I mean, you do that with Derrick. They do it as more guys than anything. Maybe they're trying to set up a screen, whatever the case may be. But, can you play with Tyjae Spears as a slot receiver, essentially? Dontrell Hilliard could, for sure. I don't think that Spears can't take that role in some form or fashion, but you're talking about a much more nuanced route runner in Hilliard versus a guy that can catch and be a receiver in Spears. Now, maybe at some point in time, Spears develops better route craft. And I'm not saying that he's a bad route runner. I'm just saying you're talking about a player who was nuanced, who had experience in the league, who was deployed specifically because the coaching staff understood that skill set was not necessarily the most common thing for a running back, and you could find ways to win matchups there. Spears is going to provide you some matchup opportunities. I don't think that the best usage of him would be to just say, all right, run him out there as your slot receiver.
It'll also probably take a couple of weeks for us to get into a different frame of mind on what we expect from this offense, right? When we see what Tim Kelly rolls out there.
Oh, sure.
So that's a big part. We still, I feel like we do a lot subconsciously based on what to expect from this offense with the information that we have in the Mike Vrabel era.
Yes.
Without Tim Kelly as the play caller.
The best thing that here's the way to look at why don't we do this coming up next? Because we can also talk about Will Levis apparently had eye surgery. Teron Davenport doing some reporting on that. Talk about the impact of that and what to expect from the way this Titans offense will look in week 1. Coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. So, brought up the idea of expectations for the Titans offense and what, this kind of looks like, minus Kyle Phillips for the immediate, for at least the first 4 games of the season, placed on IR. And Lucas had kind of brought up expectations just generally for Tennessee and looking at how they're heading into the season, looking at the roster construction, things like that, when in reality it's going to continue to change over the course of the next week and change. So my expectation for the Titans on offense this year, or at least in week 1, it's tough to kind of use anything but one thing to really inform that. Can you guess what that one thing is? Because it's not Tim Kelly at Houston.
And it's not what you did in the preseason.
Not what you did in the preseason.
Then what is it?
Vrabel. The only thing that's going to inform anything that we know prior to them playing an actual game, scheming actual concepts, and really we're not going to know what they kind of like, what they're testing out, what they feel good about, proof of concept, bread and butter type plays. We're not going to know that until about mid-October, basically, once you've seen more of them on tape. But the only thing that informs my opinion of what the offense is going to feature is Mike. Mike's been here. Mike continues to say that running the football is core to their identity. Derrick Henry's presence on the roster continues to inform that. They obviously are utilizing Tajay Spears in a variety of different ways. We see what we can see at training camp practices, but it's not like on the days that it's closed to media, that's the days when they're actually installing stuff that they're going to implement in games. So the only thing that really informs my opinion of what the Titans offense is going to look like is Vrabel. Because I'm not assuming that Tim Kelly is going to bring Deshaun Watson's offense and put Ryan Tannehill in it. At least that would be the thing that I would not want to see. Now, you might think that sounds counterintuitive, but I'm more interested in a coach or in a play caller who is going to form an offense more to the skill set of the talent that he's coaching. To bring the Tim Kelly Houston offense to Tennessee, I don't think is the kind of thing that you want, because that means that the coach is trying to fit new parts into an old system, a system that was designed for specific players. Now, you have DeAndre Hopkins. That's a commonality. You can certainly find plays that worked for Hopkins in Houston, worked for Hopkins in Arizona, and bring them here to Tennessee. But I want to see a different offense from Tim Kelly, or at least a variation of the offense under Tim Kelly that he ran in Houston. There will be some plays that worked for Houston that'll work for Tennessee this year. There will be some stuff that he runs for the Titans this year that wasn't deployed at all in Houston because the personnel's not the same. So my only expectation, the only thing that I'm really using to inform what I think this Titans offense is going to look like on September the 10th in New Orleans is that Derrick Henry's still here, Mike Vrabel's still here, and there's going to be a fair amount of running the football.
So how handcuffed will Tim Kelly be by the offensive line? I feel like that's a big question here, too. That could have a massive impact on how you call plays.
Sure. And by the way, they're not going to know that. I mean, they probably know a little bit from the preseason, like concepts that they feel like the offensive line can run or not run. But I let me make sure that I still have this transcript from Vrabel, because I thought his quote on the offensive line in the preseason, why they played so much and what he was looking to accomplish, was pretty telling about the state of the offensive line group. And in the absence of being able to easily access the transcript, what he basically said is, there's some stuff that we should be able to run regardless, that we're not running right now, that we're not executing right now, that we need to see more consistency out of them. Some stuff that our expectation is this is going to be a part of our offense. We need to be able to execute this, and we're not getting it done with any level of consistency. So that, to me, is pretty telling. And while preseason is not schemed, it's still applicable to the ways that they might have to hide the offensive line. Because the playbook that you go into training camp with is not the same one that you have in week 1. It's not the same one that you have in week 5. It's not the same one that you have after your bye or in week 15, right? These things continue to evolve. And they continue to evolve based on the personnel limitations that you have, injuries that occur, what guys are able to pick up on, stuff that the coaching staff might have wanted to run at the start and found out, yeah, this doesn't really work for our guys right now. So the playbook is not the same playbook throughout the course of the year, just as the roster is not the same roster throughout the course of the year. I'm curious to see most. The only thing that I want out of Tim Kelly is more creativity. Like from my standpoint, put your players in better positions to succeed. Find ways to scheme easy access throws for the quarterback. Find ways to get the wide receivers open in windows. You don't have to be Mike McDaniel, but you have to be better than Todd Downing was. And the creativity is the biggest gap that I felt between Todd Downing and Arthur Smith. You have to be, and by the way, you have to be able to nail those layups when they're presented to you, because those things don't get presented to an offense very often. That's one of the biggest criticisms from Malik. If you've got an easy access throw, take it. And if you don't have it, throw it away. Feel comfortable living for another down. But that creativity, that's the thing that I thought lacked the most from coordinator to coordinator, and now Tim Kelly needs to find ways to bring that back. Then there's this Levis story. So Teron Davenport tweeted out yesterday a story about Will Levis and a procedure that he had to correct his vision. So I thought that was interesting because immediately what comes to your mind when you hear about quarterbacks and eye surgery? Jameis. Jameis throwing 30 interceptions and then saying he got LASIK, and, after that it's all good. But with Teron, and this is on ESPN.com, you can check it out. He put it up a little later yesterday afternoon. Talking about this procedure that Levis had and how he feels like he's in a better place because of it, and the idea that this is going to, how much it might impact his ability, his vision out there. And I don't think corrective eye surgery is going to do anything to make him better about pressure. But is it something like when you see that as a headline, do you automatically panic hearing about a quarterback that needs corrective eye surgery?
No, not if you read the article.
Yeah, the article, brings the volume of that back down. But there was nothing in there that concerns you about Levis and the idea of corrective eye surgery.
He's worn contacts throughout games, and he talked about contacts occasionally falling out during games. That would concern me. So I'm glad he got it fixed.
I mean, I'm sure that's happened to play. I think Dennis Kelly has talked about that before, like losing a contact during a game and having to figure it out. I mean, they have people on the sidelines to keep those things. Like you have guys with contacts and contact solutions should you need them. But Levis apparently, so it starts off talking about how he's worried. He was worried about falling asleep without taking his contact lenses out. He's got glasses that he wears and things like that. Nearsightedness is what he was working with. Something that's very common. Many of us wear glasses to drive or read for similar reasons.
Well, what do you mean what he was working with? Like the surgery was to improve his long-distance vision.
Right, nearsightedness.
Yes.
What, did you get confused about nearsighted and farsighted?
You made it sound like he was trying to fix his nearsighted vision.
No, I'm sorry. Forgive me if I phrased that incorrectly. So he's got a specific type of lens that he underwent a procedure for in June prior to training camp beginning. So it's not like this is something that's happened between, today and yesterday, basically. This is something that happened prior to training camp. Implanted what is called a vision implantable columnar lens via a small incision into the eye. So there's a brief recovery period. He was back in action before training camp. Anything that he did or did not do in training camp of the preseason cannot be attributed to poor vision because he had the corrective surgery after the fact. And it sounds like, he's in a good place with it. Quote, I need to be really careful with the decision. Being a quarterback, my vision, how I see the field is everything. You imagine being a quarterback and being told that you need corrective eye surgery, like in your rookie season before your first training camp? Even if it is routine, outpatient, like small incision. Okay, bud, we're going to get you some LASIK. It's going to be okay. Not specifically that this is LASIK, but a procedure that's similar, that sounds similar.
That would scare me as a broadcaster.
Scare the hell out of you in anything. Yeah. Correct? Eyes and back. Like, those are the things that make me the most nervous about the idea of corrective surgery. Now, one is obviously significant, much more significant than the other. But that Levis and this eye surgery was even it's worthwhile information to know. People are going to be interested in it. But I think that you need to read the article. I think a lot of people saw the headline yesterday, panicked a little bit without reading the article. And, that's a product of just social media scrolling and doom cycling the way that we tend to. Greg Burton says, this explains why Levis can't hit the broadside of the bar and he can't see. It's not, Levis's accuracy is not something that's in question to me from like the preseason, for example. There are accuracy questions, there are ball placement questions to be had, but like the interception at the end of the Chicago game, right? Where Racing McMath, who's not on this roster anymore, runs a poor route and Levis throws a pick that could have potentially put them in position to, I don't know if they win the game, but they at least had a chance at the end. It was like 23 seconds on the clock, something like that when he throws the pick. But it's an incorrect route by the receiver. Interceptions, I think, are the most inaccurately analyzed thing that we do. And I'm talking about media, I'm talking about fans. There needs to be a lot more scrutiny on individual interceptions rather than just broadly assessing it by interceptions. Because there's so many things that go wrong on interceptions. That's like saying that Malik Willis or that Josh Wiley should be held to account for the last interception that Malik Willis threw in his directions. That's a Malik Willis interception,
but
more than it is Josh Wiley.
Both things can be true. Wiley should have caught that ball.
No. I'm talking about the last one, not the one in Chicago.
Oh, the one that's behind Wiley against New England.
Like,
okay.
Wiley I should have used a different example because Wiley was involved in two. But
with Levis, the issue is more of the play before that, right? Where he misses Gavin Holmes open
the
over
Gavin
the
Holmes
middle.
misses bad.
Like it's right there. The play is there, and he just misses.
Yeah.
And that forces the fourth down pick.
615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the conversation. Steve calling us from Kentucky Lake, just up the road. Hey, Steve.
Hey, how you doing, Buck?
Good.
I heard y'all talking about Will Levis getting the eye surgery, and I just wanted to say I had it done.
You had the procedure?
Yes, sir.
And the results now, obviously, I don't want to assume anything about you, Steve, but I assume that you've not played NFL quarterback in your past.
Not since high school, and 66 years old now.
Okay, well, where I guess for context, the procedure was fairly routine. Was it outpatient? Can you give us some details?
Yeah, it was an outpatient. You go in, gosh, I think they did one eye first, and then I had to go back 2 weeks later, and they did the other eye. And they put brand new lenses in both my eyes. Right now, I see better than I did when I was 10 years old.
Well, that's great news. We appreciate the context and the call. Thank you for it, Steve.
You have to take drops every day for 7 days. And then mine had scar tissue moved in front of my lenses, so they had to go in and laser surgery both eyes.
Well, now that's an interesting point that you bring up, and thank you for the call, Steve. The idea that scar tissue, could be a factor into the equation. Now, the difference between a 66-year-old's eyes and a 24-year-old's eyes, obviously worth noting there. But, that it's something that he felt was necessary, could impact how he sees out there on the field. Did we talk about the Tua helmet cam footage at all? I don't remember if we did or not. That might have been a primetime thing.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
You didn't see this? So they had a camera strapped to the front, like a GoPro, strapped to the front of Tua's helmet during practice. And you've seen similar things like this before, but the rate of speed that Tua is having to process in a practice and the speed of the defenders moving and how fast the wide receivers are going and throwing the ball before the wide receiver even hits his break, right? To put that into context for the audience, I think is good from time to time because it shows you when you talk about a quarterback seeing the field, you see anything that's going on. That is one of the degree of difficulty on NFL quarterback. It's not something that anybody's ever considered easy, but I think every once in a while it's good to have those reminders. So if Will Levis legitimately can see better based on the corrective eye surgery, then yeah, it's better for him to have this and to deal with whatever the management of it is after the fact.
I don't think we can make any determinations on this until a doctor posts a video on Twitter about it. What's that guy's name?
Chow.
Something Morse? No, not even Chow. I'm talking.
Oh, I don't know. Is there another one?
Yeah, the one who posted the video after Traylon Burks went down and listed about 18 different possibilities.
I don't like if I can get there's two things that I would like to get accomplished for as long as they let me keep a microphone in front of my face. One, the end of record predictions. Let that die. Let that be the first thing in sports talk radio or sports talk anywhere that dies. Second, Twitter doctors. Please stop consuming the information, disseminating the information, and then saying, but I saw on Twitter that some guy said he's done for 17 years. It's a knee procedure that'll never have him playing football again. No.
It's basically WebMD.
Let's not with the WebMD on Twitter. It's worse than WebMD because it's putting a face. Some dude wearing a lab coat might as well be doing it for TikTok. You don't know if he's in his office, in a hospital, or in a bathroom with a green screen. You don't know. Enough with the Twitter doctors, please. It would be funny, though, to see somebody breaking down the corrective eye surgery of Will Levis on Twitter as one of these doctors that does like the ACL predictions in real time. Bobo is in, it says Borough Nash, somewhere between Murfreesboro and Nashville. Who's to say? Bobo, what's up?
Hey, Buck. Just real quick, want to give you guys an inside scoop on Utah and Florida. Cam Rising, 100% not playing.
Okay. We appreciate that.
And look for pass play if you can get it on as the first play of the game.
Oh wait, you're
my degenerate bettors.
Now wait, you're not the same person that called us a couple of months ago with the plus 9,000 Heisman bet, are you, or whatever it was?
That's me, baby.
Oh my God.
Who was it? Wait, who was it?
Who was the pick?
Devin Leary, Brendan Armstrong.
That's right. For the early cash out. Sicko.
Right. Former Virginia quarterback Brendan Armstrong.
Well, we appreciate call more often. We do a bad job of gambling around here, and I'm sure you're speaking to more degenerates than you probably realize that we are not serving properly.
I haven't seen how much exactly the line has moved in favor of Florida because Rising being out, I believe, became official yesterday.
Well, I think if it wasn't official when Pate was in here, he was speaking pretty definitively about it before he flew out to Utah.
It's been a doubt for a little while.
Yeah. But listen, Bobo's got the inside track. Keep an eye on it.
Question is, can Florida move the football? And I don't know if the answer to that is yes.
Ryan in Murfreesboro is next. Hey, Ryan. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Man, I always wondered why Will Levis was projected so high. You know, he was a transfer from Penn State to Kentucky, and they were just lavishing over him in the combine. But you guys know, just by chance, who has the biggest hands in the NFL as a starting quarterback right now?
Do you know the answer to the question before I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question. Who does?
Russell Wilson.
Does he actually?
His hand size is 10 and 10.25.
Oh my God.
Will Levis's hand size is 10 and 5/8, which makes him he has the biggest hands in the NFL right now as a potential quarterback. To shed some light on that, what do we plan on doing with him?
Lucas, you're going to let him finish the call? Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What do you plan on doing with him? You're asking what the Titans plan on doing with him?
Yeah, I mean, why do you take a quarterback in the second round? And you know, the guy you drafted last year is you knew he was going to be a year or two in the making in Malik Willis, and he's done just that in the preseason. And right now, Will Levis is looking like a third stringer that probably won't make the roster next year. I mean, I'll hang up and let you guys elaborate.
Thanks for the call. What are you huffing and puffing about?
I thought he was done like 4 times. I'm sorry, Ryan.
You have tools at your disposal other than just fading him down mid-conversation.
I thought he was done talking multiple times during that call.
We have a system in place to prevent it from being that way. You have the tools. It's the whole reason. It's the only creativity I've actually brought to the radio show is hearing one Larry David episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm and thinking, oh my God, we need to implement that on the radio show. It's not even my idea. It's Larry David's.
You need to watch that show more.
Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yeah. I
finished it.
Oh, you did? You watched the whole thing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that some time ago. The only thing that drives me crazy about Curb is that they wait like 5 years at a time to put out a season. Anyway, why draft him? Because it's a new GM, and quarterbacks don't like Malik Willis was always going to be a 1 to 2 year project. That doesn't matter. The NFL doesn't work that way. You need to produce sooner rather than later, and Malik Willis didn't produce bleep last year. So they brought in a quarterback, second-round pick, high-value asset with not like the worst draft capital situation in the world. It's worth doing. You probably do that deal again. And if you don't like Will Levis because you watched him in the SEC or something like that, like 2021, there's plenty of evidence for Will Levis to have been a top draft choice. 2022 didn't go the way that it worked or the way that he wanted. And, these things happen. He has a chance to redeem himself at some point in his NFL career. Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045 is the number. Updates and polls as well. Get you over to Blaine and Mickey coming up next. Last call for phone call, 615-737-1045. If you got them, update some polls, get you over to Blaine and Mickey here in just a second. Good result for Nashville SC last night as well. Hear Lucas's thoughts in a moment. He was on the call for their draw against Inter Miami. James and Franklin up next, though. Hey, James.
Hey, guys. Do y'all remember the old ESPN SportsCenter commercial with Ricky Fowler? He comes walking in the break room, and he pours, like, decaf. Then he pours orange juice in his coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Kind of insinuating that he's, like, colorblind.
Yeah.
Is that what's going on with Levis? Did he think the mayo was creamer?
Wait, so you're blaming his poor vision on his decision.
I don't think that would have made.
Hey, by the way, if it was a screw up, he made a hell of a lot of money off that screw up because Hellman's dropped the bag on him, not just the lifetime supply of mayo. He's getting paid for that.
It's always so laughable when fans are like, focus on football with that stuff.
Did you see some? I did see some weird reactions with that because it was at a time when he wasn't practicing. It was kind of like the Tannehill Celsius thing when he wasn't at training camp yet.
Like the guy can't get an endorsement? What? That's so laughable.
Focus on football. No, I have no idea that commercial was shot 6 months ago when he was still in the draft process. They probably didn't even know he was going to go yet, and he had that commercial in the can.
That's pretty good from James. Pretty good. I guess that wouldn't make Levis colorblind, but it's a funny concept.
Well, I don't know. I had a friend who was red-green colorblind. One of my buddies from high school. He went to Vanderbilt. It was actually the first person I lived with down here.
Blue is colorblind.
We were watching they used to do the Color Rush uniforms. I think it was the first Color Rush game. We were at Sam's Sports Grill in Bellevue watching the game.
He's like, why are they just wearing gray?
It was the Jets and the Bills. Red-green.
Is this gray on gray? What's
and
going on
their
here?
television everywhere. They're big, they're probably 50-inch televisions over there at Sam's, and no free ads, but like plenty of televisions for you to be able to tell clearly that it's the Bills and the Jets. It's green and red, and he's legitimately confused because he's squinting. He can't see the logos on the helmet, and I'm like, "What's wrong with you?" He goes, "I'm colorblind." You can't tell that's bright. That's literally Christmas tree color, red and green.
It'd be funnier if he just didn't know he was colorblind or refused to believe it.
And that was the way that he found out?
Is just baffled by why two teams wearing gray are playing each other on a gray field. Doesn't make any sense. What's happening here?
I was like, so every grass field that you've seen is gray to you? He's like, yeah, that's what I know to be green.
Yeah, that's blue. That's my roommate. Same thing.
Oh, I thought you were when you said that's blue, I thought you were talking about the color.
No. Like blue is, although his name is a color, he is colorblind.
Oh, blue. Quick NFC update before we do some polls.
Yeah, scoreless draw in Miami. Good result. Nobody has done that yet. Nobody has held Miami scoreless in this Lionel Messi era. I mean, Miami went from a team averaging a goal a game for the majority of the season in all competitions. I mean, truly dreadful in that sense, to averaging 3 per game. 27 goals in 9 matches since Messi came into the fold. And not just Messi, Tata Martino, the manager, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba. And Nashville has just kind of laid out the blueprint on how to deal with that whole group. And if anything, Nashville had the more quality of the chances. They had a goal called back due to offside, a potential handball that could have been a penalty for Nashville in stoppage time, also called back due to an offside earlier in the sequence. So good result, and they'll look to get 3 points on Saturday against Charlotte before heading into a nice little much-needed 18-day break before their next game.
Polls, please.
All right, Dan. I reckon I'll talk about a poll update. This is Carl Childers. There's a young feller. I think he's got the final numbers. Here's the producer of the Buck Rising show. A feller named Lucas Panzeker. Got any mustard and biscuits?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty. New Ford. Which former Vol will have the better rookie season? Cedric Tillman or Jalen Hyatt? 68% go with Jalen Hyatt, who changed his number. Did you see he's wearing 13 this year in honor of Odell Beckham?
I sure did. Let's save that for a topic tomorrow, perhaps a 45. Maybe the SEC stat of the day somewhere in there?
I would agree that Jalen Hyatt has more opportunity in that Giants wide receiver room. Kind of provides something that isn't really there.
I watched Sauce Gardner in the Hall of Fame. You can't learn a lot from the preseason, but I saw Sauce Gardner in the preseason finale do exactly what every NFL corner is going to do to Jalen Hyatt. with much success. Press him, and he does not like that at all.
Which college football team that has never made the playoff has the best shot to make it for the first time this season? Andrew, Kenneth, Eric. Actually, there's not a single reply in here that doesn't say Tennessee.
No, there's not one.
It's all Tennessee.
You all can't be trusted, and I love you for it.
My pick's Florida State coming out of a weak ACC. We'll see what Clemson has this year with Dabo reconstructing his staff really for the first time.
Yeah, I don't know where is Clemson ranked preseason?
Oh, I don't have the AP poll in front of me. I mean, there are high hopes for Clemson.
But they're below Tennessee, right?
I believe so. Dabo brings in Garrett Riley. It's a good hire. Cade Klubnik, now a sophomore. He got some starting experience. We remember watching him in the Orange Bowl. It wasn't terribly pretty against Tennessee in that game. I'm just stalling so I can pull it up. Clemson is the number 9 team, so actually in front of Tennessee, who is the number 12 team in the country in the preseason poll.
Okay.
Who gets more opportunities with Kyle Phillips out? NWI, Kearis Jackson, Chris Moore, or Colton Dow? 37% say Chris Moore. 32% go with Kearis. 18% say NWI, only 13% say Dow.
It's NWI.
If I were to give you an over-under on the amount of snaps Kearis Jackson plays on offense against New Orleans, if I put it at 8, where would you go?
Under
8 snaps on offense.
On offense, yeah. Under.
Yeah, not special teams.
Not special teams. Under 8 snaps on offense for sure.
Who you got tonight, Florida or Utah? You can hear that game, by the way, right here on The Zone, 7 p.m. kickoff, courtesy of Westwood One.
Fun.
59% are going with the Utes.
Now, well, Utah is definitely obviously favored at home. Florida, that's just such a wild card this year. And week 1 is so wonky anyway.
I don't know about wild card. Wild card makes it seem like they could sort of spoil anybody's party. Like, I agree we don't really know what to expect from Florida,
Sure.
but I don't know about wild card because I just don't buy that offense right now. I really don't. And this staff believes in Graham Mertz. I don't. He's going to have to prove a lot of people wrong. I could see Utah gutting this one out. It's going to be a lot tougher without Cam Rising.
Utah minus 4.5.
I'm going to take Adam Sparks' advice on this one.
Don't gamble. I got excited. It's payday. I want to burn some money. No. Terrible decision. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Blaine and Mickey are coming up next. I'll be on with them for a little bit, so we'll talk some Titans then. Prime time tonight. See you guys tomorrow at 10.